The crystal wine glass in my hand was the only thing keeping me grounded. I stared at the deep red liquid, watching it swirl, trying to focus on the physics of the fluid dynamics rather than the absolute nausea rising in my throat. Across the mahogany table, a table I had paid for 3 Christmases ago, sat the nightmare scenario I never thought I'd actually have to witness. My sister, Kayla, was glowing. Not the subtle glow of happiness, but the frantic, high-wattage shine of someone who had won a prize she didn't deserve. And next to her, with his hand possessively resting on her knee, was Travis, my ex-husband, the man who had systematically dismantled my self-esteem, drained my bank accounts, and nearly cost me my life 5 years ago. Now, he was wearing a cashmere sweater that looked suspiciously like the one I bought him for our first anniversary, smiling at my parents like he was the prodigal son returned. "We have an announcement," Kayla squealed, holding up her left hand. The diamond wasn't huge, but it caught the light of the chandelier. "We're getting married." My mother, Linda, clasped her hands together in a performance of delight that deserved an Academy Award. "Oh, finally! I knew you two would find your way back to each other. Well, not back, but, it's fate." My father, Robert, nodded solemnly, cutting into his steak. "About time. Travis is a good man. He needs a good woman who appreciates him." The silence that followed was heavy, directed entirely at me. I was the elephant in the room. I was the bad woman who hadn't appreciated him. I was the CFO of a major real estate firm, the one who paid for their vacations, their car repairs, and the very roof over their heads, yet I was the failure because I couldn't make a marriage work with a monster. "Congratulations," I said. The word tasted like ash. I reached for my purse. "If that's the news, I think I'll head out. I have an early meeting regarding a commercial merger tomorrow." "Sit down, Jasmine," my father barked. His voice had that old edge to it, the tone that used to make me freeze when I was a child. "We aren't done. We're discussing the wedding budget." I paused, halfway out of my chair. "Why am I involved in the budget? I'm not the bride." Travis smirked. It was that same arrogant tilt of the lips that used to precede a gaslighting session. "Come on, Jazz. Don't be bitter. We're family now. Again." "Kayla deserves the best," my mother interjected, her eyes narrowing. "She wants the grand ballroom at the plaza. Flowers, live band, the works. We've crunched the numbers. We need $50,000. I blinked. "Okay, good luck saving for that." "No, Jasmine," my mother said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, silky whisper. "We don't need luck. We need you to write the check. Consider it your blessing, a peace offering, to show you've moved on and forgiven Travis." The air left the room. They weren't asking. They were demanding. They wanted me to fund the celebration of my sister marrying my abuser. "You want me," I said slowly, ensuring my voice didn't tremble, "to pay $50,000 for my sister to marry the man who put me in the hospital?" "That was a misunderstanding," Kayla snapped, slamming her hand on the table. "Travis told us everything. He said you were hysterical that night. You slipped. You always were clumsy, Jasmine. Don't try to ruin my happiness just because you're a jealous, dried-up workaholic." "He's changed, Jasmine," Dad added, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Family forgives. If you don't do this, you're proving that you don't care about this family. You're the rich one. It's your duty." I looked at them, really looked at them. The entitlement etched into my sister's face, the smug satisfaction in Travis's eyes. He knew exactly what he was doing. He was taking my money, again, but this time with my parents' blessing. And my parents, they looked at me not as a daughter, but as a resource, an ATM with a pulse. My heart hammered against my ribs, a chaotic rhythm of rage and sorrow. But on the outside, I forced my face into a mask of stone. I saw the dynamics clearly for the first time. This wasn't just unfair, it was predatory. I need to think about it, I lied. What is there to think about? Mom hissed. Don't be selfish. I'll let you know in a week, I said, standing up fully this time. I grabbed my coat. Enjoy the steak. I paid for that too, by the way. I walked out of the house, the cool night air hitting my face. I didn't cry. Not yet. I got into my car, locked the doors, and just breathed. As I drove away from my parents' house, the familiar streets blurred. Suddenly, I wasn't 34 years old in my luxury sedan. I was 26, sitting in the passenger seat of Travis's beat-up Ford, trying to make myself invisible. To understand why my parents' request was so grotesque, you have to understand who Travis really is. When we first met, he was charming. He was the guy who brought flowers on the second date and listened to my dreams about finance and architecture. But the mask slipped the moment the ring was on my finger. It started with finances. He quit his job 3 weeks after the honeymoon because his boss didn't respect his vision. For 3 years, I carried us. I worked 60-hour weeks to pay the rent, buy the groceries, and fund his business ventures that never materialized. But the violence, that was insidious. It started with a shove, a grabbed wrist, a thrown plate. He always apologized. He always cried. And like a fool, I always believed him. The memory that haunts me most, the one that played in my head as I drove down the interstate away from my parents, was the night I lost the baby. I was 8 weeks pregnant. It was a surprise, but I wanted that child more than anything. I thought maybe a baby would fix him. I came home early from work, exhausted, carrying bags of groceries. Travis was on the couch, surrounded by beer cans and his loser friends, playing video games. The apartment was a wreck. "Can you help me with the bags?" I had asked, my back aching. He didn't even look up. "Stop nagging, Jasmine. Can't you see I'm busy?" One of his friends snickered. That triggered him. He stood up, needing to perform, needing to show he was the alpha. He grabbed the bags from my hands and threw them across the room. A jar of pasta sauce shattered against the wall. "You think you're better than me because you pay the bills?" he screamed, his face inches from mine. The smell of stale alcohol was overwhelming. "Travis, please, the baby," I whispered, instinctively covering my stomach. That was the wrong thing to say. "You care more about that thing than me," he roared. He shoved me, hard. I stumbled back, my heel caught on the rug. I fell, hitting my side against the sharp corner of the coffee table before slamming onto the hardwood floor. A sharp, tearing pain ripped through my abdomen. It wasn't just a bruise. It felt like something inside had severed. I curled into a ball, gasping, "Travis, help me. Something's wrong." The room went silent. His friends looked uncomfortable, shuffling towards the door. Travis looked down at me with cold, dead eyes. There was no panic, no regret, just annoyance. "Get up," he spat. "Stop being a drama queen." "I'm bleeding," I sobbed, feeling the warmth spreading. "Please, take me to the hospital." He grabbed his keys. "I'm going to the bar. I'm not dealing with your hysteria tonight. If you want to go to the hospital, drive yourself." He stepped over me. He literally stepped over my convulsing body to get to the door. "God probably took the kid away because you'd be a terrible mother anyway," he said before slamming the door. I dragged myself to the phone. I called 911 myself. I rode in the ambulance alone. I lost the baby alone in a cold, sterile room while the nurses looked at me with pity. That was the man my parents wanted me to pay $50,000 to welcome back into the family. The man who told me my miscarriage was divine intervention because I was unworthy. The memory burned in my chest, hotter than the anger. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the erasure of my trauma. My parents knew. I had told them, and they chose to rewrite history to suit their narrative. The days following the miscarriage were a blur of grief and physical pain, but the emotional blow that followed was the one that truly broke me. It was the moment I realized I was an orphan with living parents. After I was discharged from the hospital, I didn't go back to the apartment. I couldn't. I packed a bag while Travis was out and drove straight to my parents' house. I was pale, weak, and emotionally shattered. I needed my mother. I needed my father to be outraged, to grab his shotgun, to protect his little girl. I sat at their kitchen table, the same table where tonight they demanded 50 grand, and told them everything. I told them about the shoving, the drinking, the gambling, and the cruel words he said as I lay bleeding on the floor. My mother made tea. She didn't hug me. She set the mug down and sighed, a long, suffering sound that suggested I was the one burdening her. "Jasmine," she began, her voice tight, "marriage is hard. You can't just run away the first time things get rough." "Mom," I choked out, tears streaming down my face. "He pushed me. I lost the baby. He left me on the floor." "He was probably stressed," my father said from the living room, not even looking away from the TV. "Men handle stress differently. You're the breadwinner, Jazz. That humiliates a man. You probably provoked him with your attitude." I stared at them, unable to process the words. "Provoked him? I asked him to help with groceries." "You have a sharp tongue," Mom said, sipping her tea. "Look, we like Travis. He's charming. He helps your father with the lawn." "If you leave him, what will the neighbors think? A divorce? In our family? It's shameful." "Shameful?" I stood up, clutching my stomach where the stitches were still fresh. "He abused me." "Lower your voice," Dad snapped. "We don't air dirty laundry. Go back home, apologize for upsetting him, and try to be a softer wife. Maybe then he won't get so angry." That night, they refused to let me stay in my old bedroom. They said it would send the wrong message to Travis and undermine the sanctity of my marriage. They sent me to a motel. I sat in that cheap motel room, staring at the peeling wallpaper, and something inside me died. The little girl who wanted her parents' approval vanished. I realized then that their love was conditional. It was based on my ability to maintain their image, to be the perfect, successful daughter with the perfect husband, regardless of the rot beneath the surface. I divorced Travis without their help. I paid for the lawyer myself. I faced his stalking, his threats, and his slashing of my tires alone. My parents stayed in contact with him the whole time. I'd see his name pop up on their phones when I visited. They'd say things like, "Poor Travis is having such a hard time," or "He really misses you." I built myself back up from zero. I got a promotion. I became the CFO. I started making serious money. And slowly, my parents started loving me again. Or rather, they started loving my success. They loved the expensive gifts, the vacations I paid for, the renovations I funded for their house. They gaslit me into thinking I had overreacted back then. Over the years, they wore me down until I stopped talking about the abuse. I buried it to keep the peace. I let them use me because I was desperate for a connection, even a toxic one. But tonight, seeing Travis with Kayla, hearing them demand I fund their union, it ripped the scab off a wound that had never truly healed. They weren't just indifferent to my pain. They were actively profiting from it. They were willing to sacrifice my dignity to secure a husband for Kayla. The golden child who had never worked a day in her life, who dropped out of college, who had a history of drug use that I had paid to send her to rehab for. They thought I was the same Jasmine, the doormat, the provider. They were wrong. Back in the present, I sat in my car outside my apartment complex, the engine idling. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Mom. "Don't be dramatic. We expect that check by Friday. Travis and Kayla are looking at venues on Saturday. Do the right thing." I stared at the screen. The audacity was breathtaking. I went inside, poured myself a stiff drink, and sat in the dark. I replayed the dinner scene in my head, the way Dad had threatened me. "I'll write you out of the will." I laughed out loud, a cold, harsh sound in the empty apartment. The will? What will? They had nothing. Their retirement savings were meager. Their car was leased in my name. And their house? Oh, the house. That was the moment the snap happened. It wasn't a breakdown. It was a breakthrough. The fog of guilt and familial obligation lifted instantly, replaced by a crystalline clarity. For years, I had been operating on emotion, trying to buy their love, trying to prove I was worthy. Now, I switched operating systems. I engaged my CFO brain. In business, when a liability becomes too great, you liquidate it, you cut your losses, you enforce the contract. My sadness evaporated. I felt a surge of adrenaline, cold and sharp. I walked into my home office and opened my safe. I pulled out a black leather notebook, my black book. I'm a meticulous person. In my line of work, documentation is everything. For the last 5 years, every time I gave my parents money, I wrote it down. Every time I bailed Kayla out of jail or debt, I kept the receipt. Every abusive text Travis sent me, I had screenshotted and printed. But the most important document wasn't in the notebook. It was in a fireproof lockbox. 5 years ago, right after my divorce, my parents nearly went bankrupt. They had refinanced their home to fund one of Dad's failed investment schemes and were facing foreclosure. They came to me weeping. I saved them. But I had just been burned by Travis financially. I was smarter then. I didn't just give them the money. I created an LLC, a limited liability company with a vague name, Oak Tree Holdings. I used that LLC to buy their mortgage debt from the bank and pay it off. Legally, Oak Tree Holdings owned the house. My parents signed a lease agreement thinking it was just a formality to satisfy the bank. They thought they were paying a nominal rent to the company. They didn't know I was the sole owner of Oak Tree Holdings. They didn't know the rent checks they skipped half the time were essentially me forgiving their debt. I held the deed in my hand. It was heavy, tangible power. I picked up my phone and dialed a number. "Sarah," I said when she answered. It was 10 p.m., but Sarah was the best divorce and estate lawyer in the city, and she was also the only friend who knew the whole truth. "Jasmine, everything okay?" "No," I said, my voice steady and devoid of emotion. "It's time. I need to initiate the eviction process, and I need a forensic accountant to look into Travis." "Whoa, slow down," Sarah said, the sleepiness vanishing from her voice. "Eviction? Your parents? They want me to pay for Travis and Kayla's wedding, $50,000, or they cut me off." There was a silence on the line. Then, Sarah's voice turned as cold as steel. "I'll be at your office at 8 a.m. Bring the deed. We're going to burn them to the ground." I hung up. I went to the bathroom and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the victim anymore. She was the executioner. I wiped the last smudge of mascara from under my eye. I wasn't going to just say no. I was going to let them think I said yes. I was going to let them climb as high as they could on their pedestal of entitlement, just so the fall would shatter them completely. I walked back to my desk and drafted a text to my mother. "I've thought about it. You're right. Family is everything, I'll pay for the wedding. Let's make it a day to remember. I hit send. The trap was set. The next morning, the conference room in my office felt less like a workspace and more like a tactical command center. Sarah sat at the head of the table, flanked by Mark, a private investigator I had used for corporate background checks in the past. Okay, let's review the assets, Sarah said, spreading the documents out. The house is legally yours. The lease they signed with Oak Tree Holdings is explicit. It's a month-to-month tenancy. You can terminate it with 30 days' notice for any reason. And since they haven't paid rent in 4 months, you can evict them for non-payment immediately. I don't want to just kick them out, I said, sipping my black coffee. Not yet. I want this to happen on the wedding day. The timing has to be impeccable. Mark cleared his throat. He slid a manila folder across the polished table. You're going to want to see this regarding the groom. I opened the folder. Travis's financial life was a disaster, which wasn't surprising, but the details were shocking even to me. He's in deep with some loan sharks in Nevada, $40,000 in gambling debt. He's been dodging them for months. The wedding? He's not marrying your sister for love. He's marrying her because he thinks you are going to pay for it. He plans to skim from the wedding budget to pay off his debt. So if I don't pay, I mused, his legs get broken? Essentially, Mark nodded, but there's more. Your sister, Kayla. She's pregnant, right? That's what they said. 4 months along. Mark tapped a photo in the file. It was Kayla looking cozy with a guy who definitely wasn't Travis outside a dive bar. The timestamp was from 3 months ago. Travis was in rehab, court-ordered, for alcohol during the month of conception. Unless he has magical powers, that baby isn't his. My jaw dropped. Does Travis know? I doubt it. Or maybe he doesn't care, as long as he gets access to the family money, meaning your money. The level of deceit was staggering. Kayla was pinning another man's baby on Travis to trap him. Travis was trapping Kayla to get to my wallet, and my parents were facilitating the whole circus to keep up appearances. I need proof, I said. Irrefutable proof. If I drop this bomb, they will call me a liar. They will say I forged documents. I need DNA. That's tricky, Mark said. I can't just swab them legally. I'll get it, I said, a plan forming in my mind. I have to play the dutiful sister, right? I'll take Kayla dress shopping. I'll go over to the house to help with planning. I'll get access to their trash. Sarah smiled, a shark-like grin that matched my own. While you do that, I'll prepare the eviction papers and the cease and desist for the harassment. We'll have a process server ready on standby for the wedding day. One more thing, I added. My inheritance, or rather the lack thereof. I want to set up a trust. I want to move every single liquid asset I have into a protected entity that they can never touch. If I get hit by a bus tomorrow, I want every cent to go to a cat shelter before they see a dime. Done, Sarah said. I left the meeting feeling lighter than I had in years. I had weapons now, real, legal, nuclear weapons. Later that day, I went to the bank. I withdrew $5,000 in cash, bait money. I drove to my parents' house. When I walked in, the atmosphere was tense until I put on a fake, bright smile. I'm sorry about last night, I lied, hugging my mother. She stiffened, then relaxed when she saw the expensive designer bag on my shoulder. I was just shocked. Of course I want to help. Here's a deposit for the venue. I handed Mom an envelope with $5,000. It was painful to part with the cash, but it was an investment in their destruction. Mom opened the envelope, counted the bills, and beamed. I knew you'd come around, Jasmine. You're a good girl deep down. Where's Travis? I asked casually. Oh, he's in the bathroom, Kayla said from the couch, where she was flipping through a bridal magazine. I'll just use the guest restroom then, I said. I walked down the hall. I didn't go to the guest restroom. I went to the main bathroom Travis had just used. The trash can was right there. Lying on top was a used disposable razor. My heart raced. I grabbed a tissue, picked up the razor carefully, and slipped it into a Ziploc bag I had hidden in my purse. Step 1, complete. Now for Kayla. The next week was an exercise in extreme self-control. I took Kayla to the most expensive bridal salon in the city. "Put it on my card," I told the sales associate, loud enough for Kayla to hear. She picked a dress that cost $8,000. It was gaudy, terrified me with its excess, but I smiled and nodded. "You look beautiful, Kay," I said. In the changing room, while she was struggling out of the corset, I saw my opportunity. She had tossed a used water bottle into the bin. "Here, let me help with that trash," I said, helpful as ever. I palmed the bottle. 2 samples secured. But I needed more than just DNA. I needed to nail Travis for the abuse. My parents had gaslit me for so long, claiming I imagined it, that I needed objective truth. I remembered Mrs. Gable. She was our neighbor 5 years ago, a sweet elderly woman who spent her days gardening. Our apartment walls had been thin. I drove to the old neighborhood. It was risky. Travis might have friends there. But Mrs. Gable was still there, tending her roses. "Jasmine?" She squinted as I walked up the driveway. "Oh my heavens, look at you. You look rich." We sat in her kitchen drinking tea. It was a stark contrast to my mother's kitchen. Mrs. Gable looked at me with genuine kindness. "I heard your sister is marrying him," Mrs. Gable said, her voice lowering. "That Travis boy." "Yes," I sighed. "My parents are thrilled." Mrs. Gable slammed her cup down. "Thrilled? After what he did to you? I called the police that night, you know. The night you lost the baby. I heard the screaming. I heard the thud." "The police came too late," I whispered, "and Travis talked his way out of it." Mrs. Gable hesitated. She stood up and walked to a cluttered drawer. "I never told you this, Jasmine, because I was afraid of him. But I have a security camera on my porch. It points partially towards your old front door." She pulled out a USB drive. "The night you came back from the hospital to get your things, he was waiting for you outside. He grabbed you by the throat before you got in the car. It's on here. I saved it in case he ever hurt someone else." I felt a chill run down my spine. I had blocked that memory out. The trauma had erased it. But now, holding the USB drive, it came flooding back. The feeling of his hand crushing my windpipe, the threat he whispered, "If you tell anyone, I'll kill your family." "Thank you," I choked out, clutching the drive. "You have no idea what this means." I had the visual evidence. I had the DNA samples. Now all I had to do was wait for Mark to work his magic and for the wedding day to arrive. But the hardest part was continuing the charade. Every night, I had to answer calls from Mom about flower arrangements and seating charts. "We're putting you at the singles table, obviously," Mom said over the phone one evening, "since you're not bringing anyone." "That's fine," I said. "Actually, can I bring a +1, a colleague?" "Fine, but make sure he's presentable. We have important guests coming." Travis invited his boss. "Oh, don't worry," I said, looking at the eviction notice Sarah had drafted. "My guest will be very official." The guest I planned to bring was the process server, but I didn't tell her that. "Also, Jasmine, we need the rest of the money by Friday. The caterer is threatening to cancel." "I'll bring a cashier's check to the rehearsal dinner," I promised. "It's safer than a wire transfer." Another lie. There was no check, but the desperation in her voice was telling. They were spending money they didn't have, banking entirely on my submission. They were building a castle on a sinkhole, and I was the one holding the shovel. 3 days before the wedding, I met Mark in a coffee shop far from my office. He looked excited. You were right, he said, slapping a thick envelope on the table. The lab rushed it. Travis has 0% chance of being the father. And I found the guy from the photo. His name is Derek. He's a bartender. He's been bragging to his buddies that he knocked up a girl who's marrying a rich sucker. Travis isn't rich, I laughed dryly. He's the sucker. But wait, there's more, Mark said. I looked into your parents' finances, like you asked, specifically the credit cards. He showed me the statements. My blood ran cold. There was a credit card in my name, one I had never opened. It had a balance of $15,000. The charges were all recent. The deposit for the venue, the down payment for the florist, Kayla's ring. They stole my identity, I whispered. They opened a card in my name to pay the deposits because they knew I hadn't written the check yet. This is a felony, Jasmine, Mark said seriously. Identity theft, credit card fraud. You can send them to prison for this. I stared at the statement. My own mother? She had forged my signature? She was so confident that I would just roll over and pay it off that she committed a federal crime. Not prison, I said. That's too easy. If they go to prison, they become martyrs. I want them homeless. I want them to lose the one thing they care about more than me, their status. I called Sarah immediately. Add identity theft to the file, but don't file the police report yet. I want to hold that over their heads when they try to sue me for the house. You're playing a dangerous game, Jasmine, Sarah warned. If Travis finds out you're onto him, he could get violent again. I've hired security, I said. 2 off-duty officers will be at the wedding. They'll be dressed as guests. I went home and looked at the pile of evidence. The DNA test proving Kayla's infidelity and fraud, the video of Travis strangling me, the proof of Travis's gambling debts, the credit card fraud committed by my parents, the deed to the house. It was a royal flush. I spent the night transferring every penny I had into the new trust accounts. I locked down my credit so no more cards could be opened. I changed the locks on my own apartment just in case they had a spare key I didn't know about. I was fortifying my life. That night, Kayla texted me. Hey sis, can't wait for the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. Make sure you bring that check. Love you. Love you. She hadn't said that to me in 10 years. She only loved what I could provide. I replied, see you there. I have a surprise for you. I slept like a baby that night. It was the calm before the storm. The anticipation of justice is a powerful sedative. The rehearsal dinner was held at an upscale Italian restaurant. The room was filled with relatives I hadn't seen in years. Aunts and uncles who ignored me during the divorce, but were now smiling and waving because they heard I was successful. I walked in wearing a red dress. My mother had specifically told me to wear beige so I wouldn't outshine the bride. So naturally, I wore crimson. Jasmine, Mom hissed as she grabbed my arm. You look loud. I thought it was festive, I smiled. Where's the happy couple? Travis and Kayla were at the head table, laughing. Travis was drinking heavily. I could smell the whiskey from 5 feet away. The dinner was an endurance test. My father gave a toast. To Travis, he bellowed, raising his glass. A man of honor, a man who stepped up. We are so proud to welcome you into the family. And to Kayla, our beautiful princess. He didn't mention me, not once. I was the one paying for the food on their plates, the wine in their glasses, and the roof over their heads, but I was invisible. Then Travis stood up. He swayed slightly. I just want to say, he slurred, looking directly at me with a sneer, that love conquers all, even the haters. Some people, he pointed a finger at me, some people can't keep a man because they're cold, frigid, but Kayla, she's a real woman. The room went silent. My aunts looked at their plates. My parents didn't say a word. They didn't defend me. Mom actually took a sip of wine, looking bored. That was the final confirmation I needed. They didn't care if he humiliated me publicly, as long as the checks cleared. After the speeches, I went to the hallway to use the restroom. I knew Travis would follow. He was a predator. He sensed I was the threat. Sure enough, as I was washing my hands in the empty hallway near the kitchen, he cornered me. "Where's the money, Jasmine?" he growled. The charm was gone. His eyes were bloodshot. "I'll give it to Dad tomorrow," I said calmly, backing up against the wall. I subtly tapped the record button on my phone in my clutch. He slammed his hand against the wall next to my head. "No, you give it to me tonight. I have expenses." "Gambling debts aren't wedding expenses, Travis," I said coldly. He froze. "Who told you that?" "I know everything. I know about the debt. I know about the loan sharks." He grabbed my arm, squeezing hard enough to bruise. "Listen to me, you bitch. If you don't hand over that check, I will make your life a living hell. I did it before, I'll do it again. And this time, no one will believe you because you're just the jealous ex-wife." "Let go of me," I said, my voice steady. "Give me the money," he shouted, raising a fist. Suddenly, a waiter came around the corner with a tray. Travis immediately let go, smoothed his jacket, and smiled. "Just having a family chat. We're good." He leaned into my ear. "Tomorrow, or else." He walked away. I stood there, shaking. Not from fear, but from the sheer volume of adrenaline pumping through my veins. I looked at my phone. The recording was crystal clear. He had just threatened me. He had admitted to the debt. I walked back into the dining room. My mother grabbed me. "Did you bring the check? The coordinator needs it." I looked at her, then at Travis, then at Kayla. "I forgot it at home," I said, my voice dripping with fake apology. "But don't worry, I'll bring it to the ceremony tomorrow. I'll present it right at the altar. A big gesture, for the family." Mom's eyes lit up. "Oh, that would be lovely. A public presentation. That will really show everyone we're united." "Yes," I smiled, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "It will show everyone exactly who we are." I left the dinner early. I had one more stop to make. I met Sarah at her office to finalize the slideshow. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I've been ready for 5 years," I replied. Tomorrow wasn't going to be a wedding. It was going to be an execution. The morning of the wedding felt less like a celebration and more like the stillness before a tsunami. I woke up at 5 a.m., not because I was nervous, but because I was precise. I checked my phone. 3 messages from Mark. The team was in place, the projector was rigged, the files were loaded, the police had been notified of Travis's location. I showered, scrubbing my skin until it was pink, washing away the last remnants of the dutiful daughter I had played for 34 years. I put on a sharp, navy blue dress. It was elegant but businesslike. I wasn't going there as a sister. I was going there as a CEO closing down a failing subsidiary. The venue was the plaza, just as Kayla had demanded. Crystal chandeliers, towering arrangements of white roses, and a string quartet playing soft classical music. It smelled of money. Money that my parents didn't have. Money they had stolen from my credit, and money they expected me to reimburse them for within the hour. I walked into the main hall. The atmosphere was thick with a performative joy that felt suffocating. My mother saw me and rushed over, her face plastered with a manic smile. "Jasmine, you're here," she hissed, grabbing my arm a little too tightly. "Do you have it? The check? The coordinator is asking for the final payment before they serve the main course." I patted my clutch. "It's all in here, Mom. I told you I'm making a presentation. It's part of my toast." She sighed, relief washing over her face like a drug. Good, good. Just make it touching, okay? Don't make it about you. Make it about family forgiveness. Oh, it will be very touching, I promised. I took my seat at the back near the audio-visual booth. Mark was there, disguised as a technician. He gave me a subtle nod. The ceremony began. I watched Travis stand at the altar, looking sweaty and hungover in a tuxedo that didn't quite fit. He kept shifting his weight, his eyes darting around the room, likely looking for his loan sharks. When Kayla walked down the aisle, she looked beautiful, I'll give her that. But all I could see was the smirk she gave me at the rehearsal dinner. The entitlement, the absolute lack of conscience. The vows were exchanged. For richer or poorer, Travis said. I almost laughed out loud. He was banking entirely on the richer part. Then came the reception. The speeches dragged on. My father gave another toast, rambling about legacy and how proud he was to have a son-in-law who understood the value of respect. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Finally, the MC announced, and now a special speech and gift presentation from the bride's sister, Jasmine. The room applauded politely. I stood up. My legs felt like steel. I walked to the stage, taking the microphone. The spotlight hit me blindingly bright. I looked out at the sea of faces. My relatives, Travis's sketchy friends, my parents beaming with anticipation of a $50,000 payday. Thank you, everyone, I said, my voice clear and steady. My parents asked me to come up here today to give a very special gift. They told me that family is about forgiveness. They told me that we should support each other, no matter the cost. I paused. My mother nodded encouragingly from the front table. They demanded I pay for this wedding, I continued, because they believe Travis has changed. They believe he is a man of honor. And they believe that I, as the sister, have a duty to fund this happiness. A few confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the standard best wishes speech. So, I agreed, I said. I prepared a digital presentation to celebrate the true nature of this union and to reveal exactly what I am contributing to this marriage. I signaled to Mark, hit it. The lights dimmed. The giant projection screen behind the head table flickered to life. My parents raised their glasses, expecting a montage of childhood photos or a picture of a giant check. They were wrong. The first image that appeared on the screen wasn't a baby photo. It was a scanned document, a credit card statement. This, I narrated, stepping to the side so everyone could see, is a credit card statement in my name. As you can see, there are $15,000 in charges for this venue, the flowers, and the dress. The room went deadly silent. I didn't open this card, I said calmly. My mother, Linda, forged my signature to open it. She committed identity theft because she assumed I would just pay it off to avoid a scene. Turn it off, my father shouted, standing up. Technical difficulties, turn it off. Sit down, Dad, I said into the mic, my voice booming over his. I have the floor. The screen changed. Now it was a video. The video from last night. The audio was crisp and clear. Travis's voice echoed through the ballroom. Listen to me, you bitch. If you don't hand over that check, I will make your life a living hell. I did it before, I'll do it again. Gasps erupted from the guests. I saw Travis's face drain of all color. He looked like he was going to vomit. That was the groom, I explained, threatening me in the hallway of the rehearsal dinner last night. But why did he need the money so badly? Was it for the honeymoon? The screen changed again. A dossier of gambling slips and a police report from Nevada. Travis owes $40,000 to illegal loan sharks, I said. He isn't marrying Kayla for love. He's marrying her because he thinks my family is rich enough to save his legs from being broken. Kayla was standing now, shaking, her hands covering her mouth. That's not true. He loves me. We're having a baby. Ah, the baby, I said. Let's talk about the baby. The final slide appeared, the DNA test results. Highlighted in bright yellow was the text, probability of paternity 0.00%. Next to it was the photo Mark had found of Kayla and the bartender, Derek. Travis isn't the father, Kayla, I said softly, but the microphone carried every syllable. You're pregnant by a bartender named Derek. You trapped Travis, and Travis trapped you. It's actually quite poetic. Pandemonium broke loose. Kayla screamed, a primal, animalistic sound of humiliation, and lunged at the table, knocking over the wedding cake. My mother fainted, or pretended to, slumping into my father's arms. Travis didn't look at Kayla. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated murder in his eyes. He grabbed a steak knife from the table and took a step toward the stage. You ruined everything, he roared, charging at me. But I didn't flinch. I didn't even move. Because I knew who was waiting in the wings. Police! The side doors burst open. 4 uniformed officers and 2 detectives strode in. They didn't come for the domestic dispute. They came for the warrant Mark had flagged. Travis Miller, one of the officers shouted, you are under arrest for outstanding warrants for fraud and embezzlement in the state of Nevada. Travis froze. He looked at the police, then at me. I offered him a small, cold smile. As they tackled him to the ground and cuffed him, the guests were scrambling for the exits. It was chaos. Beautiful, organized chaos. I stood on the stage, watching the empire of lies crumble in real time. I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't felt in 5 years. The debt was paid. But I wasn't done. The guests were leaving, but the family remained, and I had one last gift to deliver. 30 minutes later, the ballroom was a wreck. The cake was smashed on the floor, a symbol of the destroyed celebration. The police had hauled Travis away. Most of the guests had fled, whispering scandalously as they ran to their cars. Only my parents and Kayla remained. They were sitting at the ruined head table. Kayla was sobbing into her hands, mascara running down her face in black streaks. My father was purple with rage, and my mother was staring at me with a look of absolute betrayal. I walked down the steps of the stage, my heels clicking on the marble floor. The sound echoed in the empty hall. How could you? My mother whispered as I approached. You destroyed your sister's life. You humiliated us in front of everyone. Are you happy? You did this, I corrected her. You forged my signature. You invited an abuser back into our lives. You tried to extort me. We did it for the family, Dad shouted, slamming his fist on the table. We needed the money, and now we have nothing. Do you know how much this wedding cost? The vendors are going to sue us. That sounds like a you problem, I said calmly. You selfish, ungrateful brat, Kayla spat, looking up. I hate you. I hope you die alone. I might die alone, I shrugged, but at least I won't die in prison for fraud. I reached into my purse. I have one last thing for you. You asked for a check. You asked for me to support the family. My mother's eyes flickered with a tiny spark of hope. Even after everything, she still thought she could manipulate me. She thought maybe I felt guilty. Jasmine, if you help us pay the vendors, maybe we can fix this. We can tell people Travis was mentally ill. We can spin this. I pulled out a red envelope. In Chinese culture, red envelopes usually contain money for good luck, but this wasn't a lucky envelope. I tossed it onto the table in front of my father. Open it, I said. He picked it up with shaking hands. He tore the seal and pulled out the document. He squinted at it, confused at first. Then his eyes widened in horror. What is this? He stammered. Read it out loud, I commanded. Notice to vacate, he read, his voice trembling. Oak Tree Holdings, LLC. Wait, this says we have 30 days to leave the premises? Who is Oak Tree Holdings? Mom asked, panic rising in her voice. We have a lease. We pay rent. You haven't paid rent in 4 months, I said, and Oak Tree Holdings isn't some faceless corporation. I leaned in close, bracing my hands on the table so I was eye level with them. I am Oak Tree Holdings. The silence that followed was heavier than the one during the video reveal. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. You? She whispered. You own the house? I bought your debt 5 years ago when you were drowning. I saved you. And for 5 years, I let you live there for pennies. I let you treat me like garbage in my own property. But today, the lease is terminated. You can't do this, Kayla shrieked. I'm pregnant. I have nowhere to go. Travis is in jail. You should have thought about that before you mocked my miscarriage, I said, my voice dropping to a deadly whisper. You said losing my baby was a blessing. Well, losing my financial support is my blessing to you. It's time you grew up, Kayla. Jasmine, please, Dad said, his voice cracking. He looked old suddenly, defeated. We're your parents. Where will we go? We have no savings. You have 30 days, I said, checking my watch. I'd suggest you start packing. The sheriff will be there on day 31 to remove you if you're still there. And don't try to steal the copper wiring or damage the walls. I have photos of the current condition. I will sue you for damages. I straightened up and smoothed my dress. I'm leaving now. Don't contact me. My lawyer will handle all communications regarding the eviction. Jasmine, Mom screamed, reaching for me. You can't leave us. We love you. I stopped and looked back at them one last time, a family of strangers. No, you don't, I said. You love my money, and my money just filed for a divorce from this family. I turned and walked out of the ballroom, leaving them sitting amidst the wreckage of the wedding cake and their own lives. I didn't look back. It has been 6 months since the red wedding, as my friends like to call it. The fallout was spectacular. My parents tried to fight the eviction. They went to the local news, trying to paint me as the villainous, wealthy daughter throwing her elderly parents onto the street. But I was prepared. I released the video of Travis threatening me. I released the evidence of the credit card fraud, which I graciously decided not to press criminal charges for, provided they left the house quietly. The public sympathy evaporated overnight. They moved out on day 29. They are currently living in a 1-bedroom apartment in a run-down part of town, surviving on Social Security. I heard from a distant cousin that my mother tells anyone who will listen that I'm possessed by the devil. I take that as a compliment. Travis is still in jail. The fraud charges in Nevada were serious, and with his record, he's looking at 5 to 7 years. He sent me a letter from prison once, begging for money for his commissary. I burned it without opening it. Kayla is the one who surprised me. The baby was born last month. It's a boy. Derek, the bartender father, wants nothing to do with them. Kayla is living with my parents in that tiny apartment, raising the baby on welfare. I heard she finally got a job as a waitress at a diner. It's the first honest work she's ever done. Maybe there's hope for her yet, but that's not my journey to witness. As for me, I sold the house. I made a tidy profit, which I donated to a local women's shelter that helps victims of domestic violence escape their abusers. I moved to a new city. I started my own consulting firm. I wake up every morning in a quiet, peaceful apartment that smells like lavender and freedom. I have a new circle of friends who know me for who I am, not for what I can pay for. I learned a hard lesson, but a necessary one. We are taught that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes blood is just a biological coincidence. Real family are the people who respect you, who protect you, and who love you without conditions. I stopped being the bank. I stopped being the victim. And for the first time in my life, I am just Jasmine. And Jasmine is doing just fine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories. Until next time, stay strong and protect your peace.